In 2021, Turkey is a G20 economy. It has the world's 19th largest GDP and a young population of 85 million. 2 years later, inflation hits 85%. The lira loses 90% of its value in 5 years. A middle-class family that saved $50,000 in 2018 watches it become worth $5,000. Not because of a war, not because of a natural disaster, because of one man's decision to rewrite the rules of economics. And here's the disturbing part. He's doing it again. To understand what happened to Turkey's economy, you need to go back to 2002. Recep Tayyip Erdogan and his AKP party win a national election. They inherit a country recovering from a catastrophic banking crisis in 2001. The IMF had just bailed Turkey out with $16 billion. Inflation was running at 68%. The lira was collapsing. Erdogan's first decade is, by any measure, a success. GDP triples. Inflation falls below 10%. Foreign investment floods in. Turkey builds highways, hospitals, airports. Living standards rise faster than almost anywhere else in the developing world. By 2010, the IMF is holding Turkey up as a model emerging economy. The country repays its debt early and with pride. But underneath this growth story, a dangerous dependency is forming. Turkey is building its entire economy on cheap foreign credit and construction. When you build an economy on debt, you need interest rates to stay low. And keeping rates low, regardless of inflation, becomes Erdogan's obsession. This is where standard economics ends, and where Turkey's story becomes unlike anything seen in a modern G20 nation. But here's what nobody tells you about Turkey's collapse. The real destruction didn't happen during the crisis. It was engineered, step by step, years before anyone noticed. Most central banks fight inflation by raising interest rates. Higher rates make borrowing expensive, slow spending, and cool prices down. This is Economics 101. Every major institution agrees on this. Erdogan does not. In 2021, he publicly declares that high interest rates cause inflation. Not reduce it, cause it. He calls interest rates the mother and father of all evil. He fires 3 central bank governors in less than 2 years for disagreeing with him. The 4th governor gets the message. Interest rates are cut aggressively, while inflation is already climbing. In September 2021, inflation sits at 20%. The central bank cuts rates anyway, from 19% to 18%, then to 15%, then to 9%. By the end of 2021, real interest rates in Turkey are deeply negative. This means the bank is effectively paying people to borrow money and punishing anyone who saves. When a country cuts rates while inflation rises, foreign investors leave. They pull their money out and park it somewhere safer. Between 2021 and 2022, Turkey loses over $100 billion in capital outflows. Every dollar that leaves Turkey must be sold for lira. More lira flooding the market means each lira is worth less. The currency enters a spiral that feeds itself. Investors sell lira. The lira falls. Inflation rises. So investors sell more lira. A self-reinforcing spiral. Ordinary Turks see what's happening and do the same. They convert their savings into dollars, euros, and gold. By 2022, nearly 70% of all bank deposits in Turkey are held in foreign currency. This is what economists call currency substitution. When your own citizens stop trusting your money, the game is almost over. Here is the hidden bomb inside Turkey's economy. Turkish companies had borrowed heavily in dollars and euros during the boom years. Cheap foreign credit had funded factories, real estate, and infrastructure. When the lira collapses, those debts don't stay the same. A loan of $10 million suddenly costs twice as many lira to repay. Corporate debt denominated in foreign currency reaches $170 billion by 2021. Companies start defaulting. Supply chains break. Imports, including energy and food, become catastrophically expensive. Turkey imports almost all of its energy. Every barrel of oil, every cubic meter of gas is priced in dollars. When the lira halves in value, your energy bill doubles overnight. And energy costs flow into every single product in the economy. This is how a currency crisis becomes a cost of living catastrophe. Not in theory, in the grocery bills of 85 million people. And if you think 3 simultaneous crises are enough to break an economy, Turkey wasn't done yet. Because in 2023, Erdogan does something that stuns every economist watching. He wins the election, and then he reverses course completely. What happens next reveals something deeply uncomfortable about how modern economies work. In 2022, Turkey records the highest inflation of any G20 economy. Official figures reach 85%. Independent economists put the real number closer to 185%. A family spending 5,000 lira a month on groceries in 2021 needs 15,000 lira to buy the same basket 1 year later. Wages don't keep up. They never do during hyperinflation. Real purchasing power for Turkish workers falls by over 30% in 24 months. The minimum wage is raised 6 times in 2 years. Each raise is wiped out by inflation before workers can spend it. For millions of Turks, saving becomes mathematically pointless. Every lira in a bank account loses value faster than any interest can recover it. When an economy stops rewarding education and skill, the educated and skilled leave. In 2022 alone, over 500,000 Turks emigrate permanently. These aren't unskilled workers looking for opportunity. They're doctors, engineers, software developers, and academics. A software engineer earning the average Istanbul salary in 2023 was taking home the equivalent of roughly $3,200 a year. That is not a career. That is an exit ramp. Turkey spends decades and billions educating this generation. They leave for Germany, the Netherlands, Canada, and the UK. The ones who stay convert every spare lira into gold the moment they receive their salary. Economists call this flight for money. It signals deep systemic failure. Turkey is also a NATO member. The West cannot afford to let it fail completely. That creates its own perverse insurance and its own perverse incentive to delay reform. In May 2023, Erdogan faces his toughest election. Inflation is at 85%. The lira has lost 80% of its value in 5 years. By every conventional measure, he should lose. He wins with 52% of the vote. And then, within weeks of winning, he does the unthinkable. He abandons the very policy that caused the crisis. He appoints a Wall Street-trained economist as central bank governor. Interest rates go from 8.5% to 45% in less than 8 months. This is the most aggressive rate hiking cycle in modern Turkish history. The same man who called interest rates the mother of all evil now approves them at 45%. The lira stabilizes slightly. Inflation begins a slow, painful descent from its peak. But the damage is already embedded in the economy. You can stop a flood. You cannot unflood a house. By 2024, the average Turkish annual salary is approximately $10,500. In 2013, adjusted for purchasing power, it was equivalent to over $15,000. A decade of nominal growth has produced a decade of real decline. Turkey's GDP in dollar terms is smaller today than it was in 2013. Youth unemployment sits at 22%. More than 1 in 5 young Turks cannot find stable work in the country they were born in. In Istanbul, average home prices require over 25 years of average salary to purchase. That ratio was 10 years in 2010. So Turkey raised rates. Inflation is slowly falling. On paper, the crisis looks like it might be over. But the structural conditions that created the collapse are not gone. They are dormant. Turkey still imports almost all of its energy in dollars. Corporate foreign currency debt remains above $150 billion. And the central bank's foreign currency reserves are still dangerously thin. When reserves are thin, the bank cannot defend the lira if investors exit simultaneously. That exit can happen in days. It happened in 2021. It happened in 2018. It happened in 2001. In early 2025, the central bank begins cutting rates again before inflation is under control. Local elections are approaching. growth needs to look good on paper. By mid-2025, the Lira resumes its decline. The same playbook, the same sequence, the same outcome. This is what economists call a policy trap. The short-term cost of maintaining discipline is always higher than the short-term gain of abandoning it. So the discipline gets abandoned. Every single time. Turkey is not alone in this. Argentina has run the same cycle 4 times in 40 years. Egypt devalued its currency 3 times between 2022 and 2024. These are not coincidences. They're the predictable outcome of the same structural conditions. Political systems that punish short-term pain will always choose the printing press over the interest rate, and they will always pay the price in the savings accounts of ordinary people. But here's the question that matters most in 2026. Are these patterns limited to emerging markets? Or are developed economies, carrying higher debt levels than Turkey ever held, simply running the same experiment on a longer timeline? That is not a rhetorical question. It is the most important economic question of this decade. Turkey did not destroy its economy by accident. It destroyed it through deliberate choices that each made perfect political sense in the moment. The lira lost 90% of its value. A generation of educated Turks left and didn't come back. The average Turkish family is poorer today than a decade ago, despite living through reported economic growth. That is the real verdict. The lesson is not that Erdogan is uniquely incompetent. The lesson is this: when political incentives and economic reality diverge, political incentives win. Every time, in every country, Turkey is not a warning from the past. It is a warning from the present. Here is the question that matters. Which economy are you watching right now? That looks exactly like Turkey did in 2019. If you want to understand the economics behind the headlines, subscribe to the Econaut. The link is below.